Hey guys, welcome to the Garbage Time Podcast. I'm your host, Katie Nolan, and this is a very special bonus podcast for you guys. That's right, you get 2 podcasts this week because today I'm joined by a very special guest, the one and only Adrian Wojnarowski. I'm too nervous to do it in front of you.
Wojnarowski.
Okay, you say it different
we spelled it out phonetically for the kids. We sent them to school with phonetic spellings through the years. Wojnarowski.
I'm just going to call you Woj.
Perfect.
Okay, perfect. That was the most stressful part. The rest of this is easy. Yeah. That kept me up at night.
Like every homeroom teacher I've ever had, right?
Yeah.
Just that long silence before my name comes up.
So we're obviously going to talk about the big news, the Blatt firing, all the LeBron stuff. But first I want to talk about your career a little bit because this job as an insider is fascinating to me. I've had, we talked to Jay Glazer, we talked to a bunch of football insiders, but I haven't spoken to like a basketball insider. Like, you are the guy when it comes to breaking NBA news. But like, how do you start getting that information?
It was never my plan. I mean, I was I grew up in Connecticut and I came up a college basketball reporter and then became a general columnist. I came up when you'd go small newspaper to bigger newspaper. And, at that time, being a general columnist was the position you wanted. You got to go to the big events. You got, you were the headliner in your sports section. You got probably paid the most of the group. And so you grew up, Mike Lupica and Mitch Albom and, Harvey Araton. Those guys were like the guys I wanted to be. They were the stars of the business. And I was in Jersey at the Bergen Record for 8+ years, and I was a general columnist covering New York, and I got to go to the Olympics and all the big events. But you could feel a shift coming, and I made the move to Yahoo at a time when Dan Wetzel, who I came up in the business with, had gone to Yahoo, which at the time didn't cover sports. Dan was really the first guy in, and he convinced me to, hey, we have a job of covering the NBA. And I felt like it was just, the future wasn't in being a general columnist in the newspaper. You could see the future was going toward specialization. And I said, okay. And I had a strong, listen, I love basketball. I've been in gyms my whole life. Felt like I had a lot of sources and relationships there. And I just said, I'll build relationships and I'll break news and I'll write columns and I'll do it the way I've always done it. And I just started down the path of I'm competitive, and the more you got immersed in it and the more you've got to work hard to build relationships, maintain them, and you just do it over a period of time. But it was never my intent to be
the guy.
Well, what it became, but the business changed, and I think that the focus on information on the internet, if you can give people something they can't get anywhere else, that's where you have value. And it was clear to me that that was a path to, to having a strong imprint.
Your move to Yahoo was what, 2006?
Yes. I always remember my last column at the Bergen Record was the Mets-Cardinals Game 7. That was my last column. So I think that was 2006 playoffs, 2007. So my first NBA Finals was LeBron's first, Cleveland, San Antonio that spring. But when I went to Yahoo, like, you had to explain to people, like, what are you calling me from?
Right.
What are you doing?
Because back then I feel like it was just...
You know who covered the NBA for us then? Steve Kerr covered the NBA for Yahoo Sports. I'm serious.
Never heard of him. I have no idea who that is.
Steve would write, Steve would do video for us. He was on TV then.
Yeah.
And he would write these nightly recaps. He was a sports editor. Michael Silver used to be at Yahoo. He and Steve went to the same high school. They were on the high school newspaper together. And Steve loved to write. He would write these nightly recaps of that's what we were. Like, I would get an email in the morning, like, from Steve, hey, great story today, great column. Like, and I always say to him, like, you write way better than I shoot. He was good at it, But at the time, I just kept my focus on getting to know the young executives in the league, the young agents, the younger coaches, because they knew what Yahoo was. They went there for their mail. They went there for, to see the weather. They were on Yahoo. The older executives in the league, it was easier to build relationships after once you started to, they'd see you were having an impact and you'd build relationships. But I just focused on the guys on their way up, who a lot of them then were assistant coaches. They were, young assistant general managers who become general managers now. Same in the agent industry. And I said, they know what Yahoo is, and I'm going to build it from the ground up, and that worked for me.
How do you make and maintain these relationships with people that will give you this information?
To me, it's a conversation you have going every day with people. To me, it's a 365-day-a-year job, and you're always talking about exchanging ideas, exchanging information. People who do their jobs with teams, they're in the information business. They need, if you can help them at times with what else is going on in the landscape, you have your relationship with them that has value. Listen, there's plenty of people who you think if I got fired tomorrow and I didn't have this platform anymore, we'd still keep in touch. And there's plenty that if I got fired tomorrow and I didn't have the platform I have, you'd never hear from each other again. And that's fine. But I think that being able to, you're not just calling people when you need something. You're not just calling people when something comes to a team's about to make a trade or a coach is about to get fired or gets fired. If they only hear from you then, at the trade deadline in February or July free agency, you better not just be calling guys 2 or 3 days before that. There's going to be 30, 40 phone calls over a period of months where there's no story. It's just a conversation or text messaging or going out and grabbing a bite with a guy when you're in town or when they come through New York to go spend time. You have to build real relationships. And I think when you do that, the byproduct, I think a byproduct of that comes. But I think if people think you're always playing an angle with them or you're just after information, I think they'll push you away.
The other byproduct of that, though, is the worry that you might become too close to them and become friendly with them and then feel like when a story comes out, if they say, hey, do me a favor and just don't report that, it makes it hard ethically when someone's your friend but also your source. How do you keep those?
The people that I have a great respect for in the league and that I cover know I'm going to say every day, but very often, there's going to be times where, hey, listen, I'm reporting this. I know you don't like it, but I'm not going to get beat on this. Or I know this isn't going to be, I know you wish this wouldn't come out. It's coming out. So, but I want to get it right. So tell me, I can think of a million instances where you get through the first 5 minutes of, come on, please don't write it, please don't write it. I'm writing it, but I want to get it right. So tell me A, B, and C what happened so it gets out accurately. And by and large, almost to a person, people understand that. And so, but those push and pulls happen they happen every day, and that's part of your job. I mean, you have to. And so, of course you have relationships with guys, and there's times where, like you said, people, they understand. I think for the most part in the league, it's a great league to cover. Guys understand that, my job's not there to benefit them.
How aware are you of when someone is feeding you information or trying to get you to cover or report something that may not be entirely accurate? Does that happen a lot?
It happened early. I don't feel it happens much, and I've been early on, I can think of, you learn over time hundreds and thousands of stories and relationships. You know who you can trust. You know who is a one-source story. If they tell me something, I don't need another source. There's people that if they tell me something, I better have 3 or 4, like where there'll be 50% or 60% of truth. Sometimes you learn the hard way early. I always try to give people the benefit of the doubt, but I always tell young reporters or tell anybody in my group, listen, you can break 100 stories in a row, you could break 200 in a row, but if you get one wrong, that's all anybody's going to remember about you. And, I just think, I like to think that the people that you deal with day in and day out and you have relationships with and you trust, they respect your job. And if people don't respect what you do, if they don't understand that my reputation means a lot to me, they're probably not going to be people I'm going to deal with a lot. And But I think for the most part, there's always different versions of the truth. There's sometimes people aren't trying to deceive you. They see something in a way, or, and so that's where you're piecing stories together from so many different places. Any time you're breaking a story, listen, it's one thing if it's just a trade or a signing or firing, and somebody who's in a position to know or involved in it says, we've made this decision. That's enough. But most stories have a lot of layers to them, and that's why you are talking to people, 7, 8, 9, 10 different people to surround a story, to understand that you fully understand it before you report it. And the time that sometimes goes into just one brief news story can be a day long of talking to multitudes of people, and that's how you have to do it every day. Because if you just try to shortcut it and just try to me, you always, the same process I had like when I was covering high schools in Waterbury, Connecticut, when I was
I love Waterbury, Connecticut.
Yeah.
It's the halfway point between here and Boston.
Yeah. And so I worked in Waterbury for 4 years. And
nice Buffalo Wild Wings in Waterbury, Connecticut. Well,
yeah,
it's right next to Waterbury.
Yeah. And so, but the same things that were important to me then, the same processes, whether I was covering like a 0-0 boys high school soccer game in the cold, they still work. They never change. No matter how the industry changes, the same exercises you go through to get something right, because the minute you take shortcuts, the minute you do that, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to hurt your reputation. And it's funny, people say in this day and age you can just throw anything out, and if you're wrong, nobody cares. I disagree. I think there's more focus. Back before the internet, and people talk about, well, newspapers were, there was something sacred about it. People didn't get things wrong. No, you just didn't hear about it.
Yeah.
If somebody in Pittsburgh wrote that Willie Stargell was going to be traded tomorrow, he didn't get traded, nobody outside of Pittsburgh heard about it. Now, if you're wrong that moment, it is viral and you're the object of ridicule. And so I think in a lot of ways you have to be more vigilant than ever. I think people have it wrong. They think you just throw out anything and it doesn't matter. I think it's never been harder to you're never more exposed than you are now to blow a story.
Yeah. And also, I mean, if you're still going through that long process and a lot of other people are taking shortcuts, there's going to be times where you're reporting a story or about to break a story and it breaks.
It happens.
Does it happen
all
a lot?
the time? All the time.
How often would you say that happens?
More than I want. I mean, listen, and then you get mad, you're pissed off, but at the same time you say, listen, I'd rather get beat than be wrong, and I'll live with that. But there's plenty of times, and I'm sure my competitors, there's plenty of times where they had something, and I got fortunate with a confirmation on something, and they were sitting on it and thought I had a couple hours here. There'll always be something where, you're weighing like a deal is close or something's close to happening, and it's the fine line of, do I get out in front of it and report it that it's close? Or do I think nobody else knows about it and I'm going to wait till the thing's done and I'm going to have it myself? And there's times where you've waited things out and then somebody else gets it in the interim. There's plenty of times where it's, no one else was able to get it. But those are decisions you're making every day with breaking news about, can I sit on this any longer? Do I put out 40% of the story when I think I can have 100% of it in the next hour? Do I just get some of it out? Now I've alerted all my competitors and someone can push it across the, finish line. So those are just the judgments you make every day.
It's tough. It sounds stressful.
Yeah, I mean,
there's so much pressure.
You know what? Listen, my dad worked in a factory for 40 years. He worked for General Motors. That was stress. Yeah. I mean, he worked hard. I'm lucky to get to do what I do. Stress is, you got to take it seriously, obviously. I work hard at it. Everybody works hard at this job. But, you're lucky to get to do this. Brain surgery stress, right? No one's...
You have a difficult job and you're very good at it. Don't downplay it too much. It's a stressful job. But I get what you're saying.
Yeah,
you're not
in
saving
context,
lives.
Yeah, get over yourself sometimes. It's... I hear it from my wife all the time. My wife's she works in
Brain
hospice.
surgeon?
No, she works in hospice. And so, like, you compare, like, what I figure is a bad day with her bad days with people. And she never comes home and says, hey, you imagine the things that go on in hospice and the heartbreak and being with people. And so, like, it's always good perspective for me. Just shut up. It's not, like, we're lucky to get to do what we do.
Wow. This has made me feel really bad about ever complaining about this job, which is an even easier version of your job.
It doesn't stop me from complaining, but...
Competition within the NBA insider world, because in the NFL insider world, it's very like who gets it first and who. And you just mentioned your competitors a little bit. Is it really fierce, or are you guys like friends? Do you have weekly meetings?
No.
Like a group text with emojis?
No. Listen, I'm competitive and I compete, and what we want to have with the vertical and what we've done at Yahoo is we compete, and you can't hang out. You can't spend a lot of time with people you compete with. You can't. Your job is to. I have a lot of respect for the people out there and do it. There's a lot of really talented men, women who do it, and I have a lot of respect for them. But we're not in this to buddy around. I'm probably not going to spend a lot of dinners with competitors. It's just the way I've gone about it. I just think that is super competitive, and you can't allow. Listen, I have a lot of relationships and people I consider good friends, but you do have to draw a line, and like I don't want people to know what I'm working on. If I'm in town for something, there's a competitive advantage to know if I'm in to interview somebody and talk. Somebody else could know we're working on a story and then try to sneak it in before. So that kind of privacy, I think you have to keep, but it's gotten more competitive. There's no question. The internet certainly has changed that. Twitter's probably changed that. There's an instant scoreboard on who was first and who had what, which was great for us at Yahoo. It helped to put us on the map. People weren't always just looking at refreshing our page and refreshing ESPN's page. And so if somebody tried to claim a story that they didn't break first, they can't do it anymore. You can't pretend you broke. You can't pretend you broke a story. Everybody saw it where it broke. That was good for us at Yahoo. Yeah.
Speaking of Twitter, during the 2011 draft, you started tweeting who was going to be picked before they announced it, and now it's something that you do every year. How much credit do you give Twitter for your success?
I think that the draft started with draft nights. It was trades and things happening. I feel like I'm getting all this information, and by the time you put it up on the site, it's too late. It's gone.
Yeah.
And Johnny Ludden, who has been my editor for a long time at Yahoo, his girlfriend, then his wife now, Jennifer, said, why don't you get on Twitter and post the pics there? And I said, oh, wow. I wasn't on Twitter yet. It's a good idea. I just did it it wasn't trying to, listen, if I have information on a decision a team's made, whatever time of the year it is, I'm going to report it. I'm not waiting for a ceremony on television. And then there's no question there was interest in it, and people liked getting that information. Some don't like it, but I think more do. You see the numbers and the interest in it. But to me, it's like, it's the draft, but it's like any other time of the year. If I've confirmed, if a team's made a decision that they're choosing a player, well, then I'm going to report that. Like, I'm not waiting for a ceremony to announce it. I'm going to report it when I know, and just like I would if they decided to make a trade or fire a coach. So to me, it just all goes in. If I have information and I verified it, I'm reporting it. I'm not worried about somebody's television show. But I'm not. It was never like, hey, I'm gonna. All right, there was a little bit that it would. All right, there was a little bit that it would mess with their TV show. That's accurate. But if it's made their lives harder at ESPN, I'm glad it did.
Oh darn!
Yeah.
Your lives are so hard. You're at ESPN. More with Woj in a minute, but first I want to tell you guys about SeatGeek. SeatGeek is the smart way to buy and sell tickets for live events. You can use it to find the best deals on tickets to NBA and NHL games, college basketball, and concerts. And if your NFL team is headed to the big game in San Francisco, you'll want to hear about SeatGeek's latest offer. SeatGeek is a lot like Kayak or Expedia, but for sports and concert tickets. It pulls all the tickets available on other sites into one place to make comparison shopping easy. SeatGeek also grades every ticket from 0 to 100 based on value, so you can quickly find the best deal within your budget. Best of all, SeatGeek always shows you the full price of each ticket up front, which means no surprise fees. If you look at tickets to the big game on StubHub, they tack on hundreds, even thousands of dollars in fees at checkout. So don't be fooled. Use SeatGeek instead. Easy fix. And here's your special big game offer, you guys. All of my listeners can get a $20 rebate off their first SeatGeek purchase. But if you buy tickets to the big game on SeatGeek after entering promo code Katie, SeatGeek's going to send you $100. Are you kidding me? I want that. Here's how it works. Download the free SeatGeek app, go to the settings tab, and click add a promo code. Enter promo code Katie, that's Katie, but you should know that. SeatGeek will send you $20 after you've made your first ticket purchase, or $100 if you use SeatGeek to buy tickets to the big game. So download the free SeatGeek app right now and enter promo code Katie.
Hi, I'm Danica Patrick, driver of the number 10 Tax Act Chevrolet in the NASCAR Series. On the racetrack, my deal is going fast, working with my team to get our Tax Act Chevy in victory lane. Away from the track, my deal is a little CrossFit and yoga to help with balance and concentration. So what's your deal? If your deal's getting the best deal, then go to TaxAct.com. File simple federal and state returns free. TaxAct is the best deal in tax. Go to TaxAct.com. You got this.
All right, back to Woj. All right, let's talk about it now. Let's talk about the Cavs. Why did they fire David Blatt? Framingham boy, David Blatt. He's from my hometown.
David Blatt, from the very beginning, listen, he was hired to coach a team that they thought was going to be Kyrie Irving, Wiggins. They thought it was going to be a young team that was going to try to make the playoffs, and then they get LeBron in free agency in that July. LeBron rejected him from the very beginning. He didn't want to be coached by him. LeBron really was difficult his last year in Miami. He was really good the middle 2 years when they won the titles. The fourth year, he became a little more distant in Miami. I think mentally he started to check out. I think mentally he was headed out. He did not want to play for David Blatt from the beginning. Now, David struggled with the transition. There's no question he did, from the EuroLeague to the NBA, just like Billy Donovan is trying to figure out from college to the pros. And there's an adjustment period for anybody. It is hard to coach in the NBA. The games keep coming at you. There's so many adjustments and matchups, and you need to learn the league, the personnel of the league. There's a lot. And Blatt's been successful. Listen, he was a Hall of Fame coach. If he never came to the NBA, he'll be a Hall of Fame coach, what he's done overseas and internationally. And I spent a lot of time with him internationally when he coached the Russian national team, and I've been in a lot of international tournaments. I'd gotten to know him pretty well before he came here. But when the star player is not going to buy into you from day one, it sends a message to the rest of the locker room of none of us have to buy in. And so it made it very difficult for him to be able to build a relationship, build a structure there that where he could have command of the locker room. And I think it's true in any organization. Like, the reason it works in San Antonio is because Tim Duncan, from day one bought into Greg Popovich, and Tim Duncan, if there's an issue in the locker room, Tim Duncan's taking care of it. Greg Popovich doesn't have to, Tim Duncan does. And when you can't have that as a coach in the league, it makes it really hard. So, listen, he wanted Mark Jackson early. His agency signed, I wrote about this the other day. They wanted Mark Jackson in. Management was not going to hire Mark Jackson. And then Ty Lue became, and I think Ty Lue's a good coach. And I think Ty Lue tried to be loyal to David Blatt. I think it became an untenable situation because LeBron and people around LeBron and players were just going to Ty Lue because in a lot of ways they'd isolated Blatt. And, they made a decision here in the last, obviously in the last week to fire Blatt. But it was inevitable because, listen, if you can't coach a team in the NBA, you can't coach the Cleveland Cavaliers if you don't have LeBron James on your side. Mm-hmm. And he didn't. And so whether they fired him now or at the end of the season or next year, I think it was inevitable.
What do you make of LeBron saying he was surprised and caught off guard? Do you really think he had no idea that was going to happen?
There's nothing that goes on. I mean, like, people aren't changing the copier. They're not changing paper in the copier in that facility without LeBron knowing it. Now, a lot of it could be semantics. They knew how LeBron felt. They've known since last year LeBron's representatives, the team.
We've kind of all known since last year. Just the way he treated him last year, you could tell.
He wasn't discreet about it.
Yeah.
I mean, it was out in the open. Openly just. It was an open disdain for him. You could see it in what he would say,
how he would
body
treat
language,
him.
how he talked. It wasn't so. I think I was shocked. I think it's semantics. But hey, listen, a lot of star players in the league have that power. It's the star player is always going to be more important than the coach in the NBA. And it's like the quarterback in football. It's the one guy with the ball in his hands who can change everything. Ty Lue's the guy they wanted, and I think LeBron now will be a little more. I think the scrutiny on them now will be on him, and I think their core guys will be even stronger now. This is the coach you wanted, and there's a mandate on these guys to win a title, and I think right now they're far from a championship level team. When you look at the way the Warriors are playing, the way the Spurs are playing, the Raptors are closing pretty hard on Cleveland right now. I know everybody sees that it's a foregone conclusion that they'll win the East. I think Toronto's going to be a problem for them.
How do you feel about that the star player having control over the coaching? Like, it seems like not smart to let the person who's supposed to be coached dictate who the coach is.
It's the nature of the league. Again, this is not isolated to Cleveland.
Right.
This has gone on. But if you want to win championships and you want... LeBron went to Miami because he wanted the structure they had. He needed the structure they had. And when he got to Miami with Eric Spoelstra, they coached him hard. They had him on a 4-year contract. He came in and they corrected his errors. They went after him. He was shell-shocked when he got to Miami. And when he tried to go around to Pat Riley, he's like, turn around, go back. That's our coach. That's who you're playing for. But that establishes a culture. You have to have an owner, and Mickey Arison there, Pat Riley, who support the coach. And when players are smart, and when they know that management, ownership doesn't have the coach's back, then they're going to get over. But LeBron played the best basketball of his career in Miami. He grew as a player. He grew as a leader, won 2 championships. But I think at the end in Miami, he didn't want that anymore. And he wanted to have autonomy. And he wanted to go back to Cleveland where they would have broader control of the organization. There were just things that Pat Riley would not allow in Miami. And Cleveland, they did it the first time with LeBron, and this time is you have the run of the place. And listen, he may still win a championship there. He may win a couple, and it may work. But it isn't the best way to run an organization.
It's not smart. He's not going to grow as a player if he just gets to do whatever he wants all the time.
Yeah, and I think they've got to have, listen, this is a league where the coaching, the adjustments, the sophistication every night of what the demands are on a coaching staff. Like to go against the Greg Popoviches and the Rick Carlisles, these guys are elite, and you have to be able to have a group that's bought into the coach, and it's not enough just to have great talent in this league. And it's going to be tough for Ty Lue. He's still a young coach. He's not real experienced. He's got a great connection with his guys, and he's got a great pedigree, and I think he's a leader of men. But that's not an entry-level job, coaching the Cavaliers. That's a win-now championship team. It'll be interesting how that plays out.
What do you think about a reporter like Windhorst, who is so close to a player that people see him as more of like a publicist than a reporter?
I don't believe that about Brian.
I don't.
I have a lot of respect for Brian. I'm not so sure he's that close to LeBron. You know what? I never pretend to know what anybody else's relationships are because I don't like people will pretend they know who your sources are or where you're getting information, and they're almost always wrong. But I have a lot of respect for Brian. I think he does great work.
Why do you think that's a narrative that's like taken over his? Because a lot of people see him that way.
I just think it's easy to pigeonhole people. It's easy to just put people in a box. None of us are. We're all the sum of a lot of work and a lot of different kinds of. Our body of work is all pretty vast. It's never one specific narrow thing that sometimes everybody wants to make it. And I mean, Brian's done tremendous work all his career. I mean, I knew him when he was in a newspaper in Ohio, and the job he does at ESPN. I think that's an unfair characterization of him. I do.
You have been a little critical of LeBron over the years. What do you say to people who, kind of the opposite of what they feel about Windhorst, say that you're biased against him just because you don't get to be in the LeBron circle?
That's another.
They're like
narrative.
opposites,
Yeah.
But this is what people do. This is how people
yeah.
perceive your guys' job.
Yeah. See, I would just say, it's hard to defend a vague, broad. To me, it's like, well, let's go through some stories and pick out some criticisms that you thought were unfair, and let's talk about them.
Yeah.
It's hard to say, well, I've written, if you want to go through a body of work and what would be considered quote unquote positive and negative, there are more positive ones than negative ones. And if you want to go through and count over the last, and I think though you've seen it evolve as he's evolved. I think in Cleveland, where the first time in Cleveland where, I started writing about a lot of the stuff that was going on behind the scenes of his immaturity at that time. Nobody was writing about it then. And so it was perceived as being quote unquote negative. To me, I saw it as, I'm writing what's going on here.
Facts, yeah.
And as he grew in Miami and as he evolved, my coverage of him, just like it would with anybody, evolved. So I think if you take it on merit, on what happened, it's a lot easier to defend it if someone says, this column and this point you made was wrong. And listen, I'm always second guessing myself and going back, did I see that clearly? Sometimes you know things and afterward you say, oh, I would have written that differently, or I didn't see the whole picture there. But I feel pretty confident about what was going on at the time and the view of it and how I reported on it. I stand by it. And I think coverage evolves as people evolve and as events evolve. And it's never about you're pro this, you're anti this. I think there's a lot more gray in it. And just like it would be with Brian, I think, and I think it is with me or anybody else who does this job.
What fans would you say are the most, I guess the good word would be passionate? Like for me, I've gotten the most anger and people are against things I say when I talk about the Cowboys. So I've found that the Cowboys, for my experience, are the most passionate fan base in terms of, so when you report a story, what fan base gives you the most, like, don't say that about, is it LeBron fans?
Yeah, it's interesting, and you put it in a good way. Is it a team's fans or a player's fans? Because there's really two. There are people who follow the league and they follow teams, and there's people who, they're Kobe fans, they're LeBron fans.
Yeah, it's more in basketball than any other sport,
Yeah, because
I feel.
the individual is stands out more than any other sport. And so I think it's probably, it's funny, the LeBron fans are funny because the Cleveland people became obviously very anti-LeBron, right? And then he goes to Miami, and now, of course, the Cleveland fans have embraced him again, and now Miami's fans are anti-LeBron. So like his group, he's going back and forth. I think they're allowed everywhere, and it's good. Listen, it means people are reading you. It means they're watching. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't. Like I get it. Like I get it. I get people are passionate about their teams, and if they weren't, like we wouldn't have jobs. Like we wouldn't. We're here because of them. So. People can be brutal. That's fine. Like, I get it. Like, my thing is, if you don't like it, I should go back to Waterbury, cover high school soccer again, and no one will ever bother me again.
It's true.
That's how I look at it.
No one, you mean you didn't get heckled when you were covering boys soccer?
Actually, high school is probably the worst because the parents.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Why wasn't Jimmy's name in that story? Why wasn't...
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You get...
Like, they call you?
Oh, yeah. And I remember... We had a sports editor there. He used to say, like, put as many names as you can in the high school stories, because then the families would go out and buy the paper. I'm like, well, that makes for a bad story, listing names. Like, you can't write a story worse than that. So I would do the opposite. I would just write, But anyway, I think it's, hey, listen, we're in public jobs, and people, like, it's sports. People have strong opinions about them, and the one thing I don't think you can do is, and listen, I know you go through this, you see it on Twitter, and there's people you want to respond to, and sometimes you might, sometimes you don't, but you'll end up, right?
My producer's laughing because sometimes.
Yeah, right? But you'll end up chasing your tail and wasting your day. Like, to me, I look at it as, I've got so many hours in the day, and I've got to find value in those hours, and so, I'm going to work hard, but I've got a family, and what am I doing if I'm chasing around? And listen, I did it early in Twitter. There were times, like, I said things I shouldn't have. Yeah, there were times, like, where I'd respond, and I can't think of an example, but I stopped and I never do it. You learn, because it's like you can't win.
Yeah.
It's stupid.
Yeah.
And it's just not a good use of your time.
You're right. Okay, I'll stop. Gotta stop. I'm not ashamed to admit that I've been laser focused on football the past few months. But football's over now, right? The season ended this weekend, right? It's over. So catch me up on NBA stuff. What are the 3 most interesting things, other than, Blatt being fired? What are like the 3 main interesting things happening in the league right now?
Well, what the Warriors are doing, the level they're playing at.
That game last night was not what I expected.
Yeah, and just absolutely just destroyed the second best team. And listen, there were some of us who thought maybe the Spurs, and listen, no Tim Duncan, and you're playing in Golden State, and they're nearly impossible to beat at home.
Yeah.
And to think somebody in a playoff series is going to go into Golden State and win games there, it's hard to imagine. The level they're playing at, the level Steph Curry's playing at, we've never seen anybody play that position. He's playing. It's hard to imagine he could get better. He did get better. They're so much fun to watch, and I think they've become. I think the streak they had early in the season, when people aren't paying attention to the NBA, when they run off 20-plus wins to start the season, they made people pay attention to the league at a time when people don't. Obviously, they're in their own category right now, and I think the Spurs, regardless of the loss last night, they're playing. It's just unbelievable to keep together what they have for so long and keep putting the pieces back around their core group and finding a way to stay elite. It's remarkable. Those 2 are head and shoulders above everybody else in the league. What's been interesting in the last week, Demarcus Cousins scored over 100 points in his last 2 games.
Insane.
56 points against Charlotte on Monday night. He is just an absolute force of nature. Physically, there's nobody at that position. There's nobody like him in the league. And Sacramento's played better than we thought they might early. Yeah.
All right. Basketball. It's basketball season for me now because of the fucking Patriots. Before you go, The Vertical. You're launching a new site Friday?
Friday.
Yeah. What can the people expect?
What we're going to do with The Vertical, it's going to be on Yahoo Sports. We're building the hub of news, information, storytelling on the NBA, on basketball. We've got a great group of people. You're going to learn something every single day going to The Vertical. We've got the best draft analyst in the world, and Jonathan Gavoni, who's all over the world analyzing players, evaluating players in college basketball. A lot of video storytelling. We're going to break news. We're going to turn stories inside out. But we've got great storytellers. We're going to use the access we have around the league to go inside. One of the first stories we'll have when we launch on Friday is Michael Lee, who we hired from the Washington Post, who's tremendous, spent 2 or 3 days inside a coaching staff of an NBA team as they prepared for a game and in the locker room, in the coaches' meetings. And we want to take people inside, kind of pull the curtain back on the league. We're going to do a lot of video. Chris Mannix from Sports Illustrated is great, and he'll be on the front lines of that with us. He's a great writer too, but we're going to have out of our studio in New York trade deadline, NBA draft, free agency. We're going to go live eventually and break news on air, and we've got a great set there and a group. Bobby Marks, who was with the Nets for 20 years, will be our front office insider. We just have a way to surround the league and surround basketball. I'm excited. I'm going to be doing things a little bit out of my comfort zone. I'm doing a news magazine piece for our debut on Friday that I'm kind of excited about. And so doing some things that, storytelling in a lot of different ways. I'm excited. I think it's going to be, if you love basketball, if you like just great storytelling, I just think we're going to be the place day in and day out that we're going to hopefully command people's attention at The Vertical.
Speaking of doing things in new ways, you've also recently started the Vertical podcast. Mm-hmm. How do you like podcasting?
I've enjoyed, so far my guests have carried it.
Welcome to podcasting.
I'll get better at it, but I've had great guests who love talking, and Bob Myers, the Golden State GM, had Adam Silver in. Kyrie Irving was terrific. I went down and saw him in San Antonio on the eve of that game at Cleveland, and I've really enjoyed it. Part of the Vertical is we're going to have what we call the Vertical Podcast Network, where it'll be me and the podcast I'll do each week, and Chris Mannix. But we're going to do something that really doesn't exist anywhere else in sports. We're about to announce. I'll announce it here.
Wait a second.
Yeah.
Are we doing it 2 weeks in a row?
Breaking
Am I
news.
about to break more news?
You are breaking more news.
Hit me. Oh, God. This is so exciting. What do we got? Sorry, I cut you off. Let's go. This is so exciting.
JJ Redick of the Clippers will be a regular weekly podcaster on the Vertical. He's going to talk to players in the league, teammates, coaches. He's going to do a weekly podcast. And there's never been an active player who took on something like this. I kept trying to talk him out of it, saying, this is a lot of work.
It is.
You're having the best season of your life. Like, I don't want the blame. But he really, listen, he can carry it. He's got a tremendous voice, tremendous perspective. We're working with digital media. They produce our podcast. They'll be producing JJ's. And I'm excited. JJ's my podcast guest this week on the Vertical Podcast, and then we get into it a little bit at the very. We have a regular conversation, but then at the end we talk about his podcast, which will be debuting here very soon.
That's amazing.
I'm excited.
Makes me feel super lazy because I do this podcast and then also a half-hour television show once a week, and it's a lot of work. Yeah. He's going to do that.
And he's running off screens four nights a week, right?
He's also going to play professional basketball at the same time. So that's really cool.
Yeah,
Thank you
excited.
for coming to where everybody comes to break news. We're like the new Players Tribune. We just break every story here at the Garbage Time Podcast.
I love it. Thanks, Katie.
Thank you. We got 10 more questions I have to ask you. The Garbage 10.
Oh, perfect.
Everyone's favorite part of this podcast because it's very easy. Just be honest. Don't lie. All right?
My nose will grow.
Here we go. What was your first AOL screen name?
Wright Woj.
Okay.
W-R-I-T-E Woj.
Ranch or blue cheese?
Ranch.
What's the first concert you ever went to?
Oh, I knew somebody was going to ask me this question eventually. I want to lie and say I went with my friend Craig Manarino that we went to see Tears for Fears because we thought there'd be girls there at the Harvard Civic Center, but it wasn't. My sister took me to...
Oh, no.
No. My sister took me to Lionel Richie. But Tina Turner was opening up, and it was like when Tina was making her comeback.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know how old I was, 10, but my sister Brenda took me to the Harvard Civic Center. So I was thinking of lying because there's nothing less cool, right? Like going to Lionel Richie. But it was my sister, and it's like, I don't even know how I ended up. There must have been something where she had to take me. I can't imagine that was. She was great
like
to me.
babysitting?
But Craig Manarino and I did go to Tears for Fears. We did think there'd be teenage girls from the Central Connecticut area. I don't remember. I just remember us leaving the concert together. So. But I believe that was kind of back to back. That's probably more than you wanted to know on that.
No, I want all of that information. Mine was Britney Spears, so you win. It was an awful first answer.
Yeah.
I'd rather Lionel Richie than Britney Spears. Who's your favorite superhero?
My favorite superhero? That's a good one. Batman.
It's a good one.
Versatile.
He is versatile.
Yeah.
Rich.
Yeah.
Do you put ketchup on top of your fries or on the side?
Side.
What's your guilty pleasure television show right now?
I tried it. My daughter is 16, and she watches. I try to include myself in some of the things she's watching.
I bet she loves that.
She does, I think, as long as I'm quiet. What's
Pretty Little Liars? Tell me you watch
Yes.
Pretty Little Liars.
That's the one. Or is there something girl?
Gossip Girl.
Girl.
But I don't think that's on TV.
I'm not giving you good. I guess that's. Well, what I still do watch is on Audience Network. They have those NYPD Blue episodes are on late at night.
Yeah.
And if I'm like, I still try to sneak down. But that's a great show. I don't think that's not like saying.
No, that's not guilty
That's like saying
pleasure.
Jersey Housewives.
No. Yeah.
Oh,
see,
you know what
that's
I used
we're
to
looking
like?
for.
I would always get it on the road. Like you'd be on the road. It was not something you would sit. You'd be embarrassed to do it in front of your wife. Mob Wives was pretty good. Like on the road.
So bad.
No, it'd be like you'd get back after a game and it would be on from like midnight till 3.
Yeah.
I'll watch one. Now it's 2. Wait, now I think like there's going to be a fight, right? So we'll watch one
Always
more.
a fight.
Yeah.
Who was your favorite mob wife?
Big Ange.
Of course.
Not that I'm saying she's in the mob. I'm not.
No one's insinuating.
I'm not that. I don't.
That
I'm staying off Staten
I
Island.
think we're outsiders in the mob, just to be clear, not in that. Do you floss before you brush your teeth or after you brush your teeth? Because we all floss twice a day, right?
I would say when I do it, it's after. Yeah.
All right. Is a hot dog a sandwich?
Only in the press box.
What does that mean?
Like, if you work in press boxes, if you cover sports, there's hot dogs in every press box. So in your mind, you can imagine that it's some kind of a sandwich. It's not. But in Sports Writer, in the parallel universe that we live in, there's probably been nights I've convinced myself that it is.
All right. What was the last movie you went to see in a movie theater?
We went to see Star Wars, whatever, Empire.
Yeah.
But the new Star Wars
You
movie.
just saw Empire Strikes Back in the theater?
You know, I still haven't seen E.T.
Whoa.
And I couldn't remember the first Star Wars. Like, my kids wanted to go, and we went, and it was fine. It was good. But I couldn't remember anything about the first one.
I'm rewatching all of them
Yeah.
in an effort to remind. I feel like you probably don't have to, but I like to.
But I still get heat from people that I've never seen E.T. But
you should see E.T.
Yeah.
I've never seen Goonies.
I don't think I've seen that either.
See, when you offer something, I offer. I'm making you feel better. There's something else I've never seen that you always make fun of me for. Okay, last one. This is a big one.
Mm-hmm.
You're about to be put to death. What's your final meal? Entree, dessert, and beverage.
Entree, dessert, and beverage. I guess I'd probably go New York strip, salad New York strip, medium
Cooked.
well,
Okay.
and probably just a Coke.
Sides? You want sides?
Baked potato. And if I'm dying,
Loaded?
well, extra butter if I'm going in the firing squad.
Hell
What's
yeah.
the difference?
What is the difference?
Yeah.
And your drink was a what?
I'll just get a Coke. That's fine.
You realize you're going to die.
Yeah.
You're just going to have a steak, medium well,
Medium well, yeah.
salad. What kind of dressing?
Probably oil vinegar, Italian, light Italian. No, actually just regular Italian. I won't even go light Italian.
Okay. Yeah. Live a little before you die. And then dessert. What's your dessert?
I guess I'd go Sunday, right? I'd go.
You
know what?
This
We would
is like
drive-
the most boring food answer I've ever gotten.
We'll go to Friendly's and we'll get a Reese's Pieces Sunday. That was always my favorite.
Well, you don't get to leave because you're going to
Oh,
die.
that's maybe they'll bring it in. For
Yeah.
you. They'll bring it in.
But they'll bring it from
They'll bring it
Friendly's.
in, right? Yeah.
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 A Sunday, a steak, a salad, and a Coke. Breaking news. Breaking news. Watch, thank you so much for joining me.
Katie, thanks for having me.
This
It was
was
a lot
really
of fun.
fun. We will be back Thursday, guys, with our usual podcast. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes, rate, leave a comment, but only if it's 5 stars and only if your comment's nice, because this is an extra bonus podcast. Listen on SoundCloud or Stitcher, wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks again to Watch for being here. Thanks all of you for listening. Bye. Love you. Mean it.